If you're an actor working on Miranda's "If by Your Art, My Dearest Father" monologue from The Tempest, then you are in the right place, because in this video I'm going to talk you through everything you need to know to get that monologue ready to go. We're going to start by reading it through, then I'm going to talk about what everything means, and at the end I'm going to talk about the acting choices that you might like to think about to make sure that the monologue is working for you, so you can make your own unique decisions and make it a really powerful monologue. So I'm going to read it through for you, but I want you to think about the fact that this is quite early on in the play. It's basically an establishing scene. So the very first scene is the shipwreck, but this is the first scene when we kind of get to see characters more in depth, and we're introducing the characters of Miranda and Prospero. So some of what she's doing here is kind of like, hey, I'm your daughter and this is my dad, and she's establishing what's going on. So do think about that and what that might mean in terms of the words that you emphasize to carry meaning to the audience. Hey, this is going on. The other thing to think about is that there is a storm going on, and the chances are that she's going to be kind of loud because she's freaking out, which you'll see in the text, and we'll talk about that as we go on. But also sometimes this is played outside, like they're looking at the storm, and so she might be carrying her voice over a bit of noise, and other times it's played like they're kind of in their own little cave thing where they live. So that's a choice you can make for yourself, but I would recommend actually trying, what does it feel like if I'm kind of projecting my voice as if there's a storm going on? Because that can sometimes help you connect to emotion. Or what does it feel like if it's a bit more intimate? I'm gonna go for talking a little bit more over, like I'm projecting. Here we go. If by your art, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them. The sky, it seems, would pour down stinking pitch, but that the sea, mounting to the welkin's cheek, dashes the fire out. Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer. A brave vessel, who had no doubt some noble creature in her, dashed all to pieces. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they perished. Had I been any god of power, I would have sunk the sea within the earth or air. It should the good ship so have swallowed, and the fraughting souls within her. Okay, so pretty quick stuff. So let's talk about what she's actually saying. What does this stuff mean? So she starts with, if by your art, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in this roar. So when she says art, she is referring to Prospero's magic powers. So again, they're establishing for the audience, hey, he's got a magical thing going on. And she's saying, hey, if you've used your magic to put the waters in this state, in this crazy tempest, the storm that's going on, allay them, stop it, please put a stop to this, father. The sky, it seems, would pour down stinking pitch, but that the sea, mounting to the welkin's cheek, dashes the fire out. That all kind of runs together. That's one big phrase, but I'll break the little parts down for you. The sky looks like it could pour down pitch. So they're kind of talking about like almost like tar. So it's looking so dark and kind of intense, I suppose, in the sky that it looks like it could pour tar down from the sky in it. And pitch was stuff that they made stuff out of. It was a building material, a bit like tar, but it's also associated with hell. So if you think about like the sky looking so like it's like hell has opened above them, and it's like a black sky that's pouring down this rain that looks almost like black tar. So it's kind of freaky. She's establishing something kind of creepy and also magical for us. So bring a little bit of that magic along. But, so it seems like the sky wants to pour down this stuff, but the sea, because the sea is in this crazy, there's all these waves going so high, mounting to the welkin's cheek. So the sea is mounting to, the welkin's cheek is the clouds, and that is dashing the fire out, so putting the fire out. Then she goes straight on. Now notice that there's a couple of things here that you need to notice as it goes on here. Firstly, she's going straight on halfway through a line. So she's gone, dashes the fire out, and still as part of that line, as it runs on, it says, oh, I have suffered. That's a clue that she's going to run on. She's thinking about her next thing already. There is a technique, and I've got a video that talks about breathing. Trying to breathe at the ends of lines rather than actually in the middle of line where a full stop might be. So the full stop here is dashes the fire out, full stop. But actually if you keep going and breathe at the end of the line, which is suffered, it gives you this sense of that she's running her thoughts together. And this is a Shakespeare technique that's quite common, and it can help you connect to some of the emotions. So watch that video and encourage you to give it a try. The other thing to notice here is that she's got the letter O. Now that, I encourage you to use a neutral sound, whatever's neutral to you. So it can be something like, oh, rather than like, oh, I have suffered. Don't make it posh. It's an expression and it's quite guttural. So she's freaking out. She's going, I don't like this, Dad. Okay, so let it come from, deep down in your gut and lean into that long sound. Don't try and be, oh, I have suffered. Don't be posh. Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer. So she's been watching this ship, which is what she goes on to say. She's been watching the ship with people in it. And as she watched them, she is feeling for them, because that's what Miranda does. She's all about the feelings. A brave vessel who had no doubt some noble creature in her dashed all to pieces. So the brave vessel, she was watching a ship out on the ocean, and she's assuming that it had some noble creatures in the ship, and that she watched it being smashed to bits by the sea. And she goes straight on again with another so there's a lot of feeling going on. So Miranda is very much, she's the heart on her sleeve thing. It's all about feelings. She represents kind of innocence, and she's sort of naive in a way. So you have to get used to being quite she's quite simple in her way. I mean, she's grown up on an island with like no other people around. So she's almost childlike. She just has feelings that just come out. So you have to be ready to be quite expressive about it. Don't hold back with this stuff, because that's not her character. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. She's describing how it feels to her to hear those people and the sound of the ship breaking. So sometimes Shakespeare says things like cry, and it could mean the people or it could mean the ship breaking. But essentially, and you can decide, your own kind of reading of that, she's hearing stuff, and that cry of the ship or the people was reverberating inside her and feeling like her insides are being bashed, because that's how she feels. She genuinely feels that in her body. So I would encourage you to work to it. What does that feel like for you? What does it feel like when you feel something knock in your heart? Shakespeare's describing for you what you want to call up in terms of sense memory. Poor souls, they perished. So she's obviously watched them kind of drowning, or what she thinks is drowning. Now it turns out, they get washed up on the island, but she thinks they've drowned. Had I been any god of power, I would have sunk the sea within the earth or air. It should the good ship so have swallowed, and the fraughting souls within her. So that whole bit runs together, but let's break down what each part means. She's saying, like, if I had any power, so she knows that she doesn't have power. You can make some acting choices around how she feels about that. What is it? Possibly she doesn't feel bad about that. That's just her lot in life, especially with the kind of character that she is. But if you want to make her slightly more modern, perhaps she has some resentment about that. Perhaps there's some nuance there. Like, how would you feel if you felt powerless about something? I would have sunk the sea within the earth or air. That word E-R-E is pronounced air, and it means before. So it's a bit of an interesting syntax here. It's sort of a little bit tricky to understand. She's saying, I would have sunk the sea within the earth. So like I would have dissolved the sea. If I had these powers, I would have dissolved the sea into the earth before it would have swallowed the ship up and the poor souls, the fraughting souls, the people within the ship. So in this end part, this is kind of a very powerful section. She is wishing for power. She is wishing that she could have done something. And there's a little bit more that you can think of there. And let's talk about that now as we move into our acting choices. So as I mentioned, you want to think about how does she feel about the fact that she's powerless? And in relation to that, how does she feel about her father and the fact that he has all the power? You definitely want to read the play, and definitely, if you can, watch some productions of it, and ideally a few different productions of it, because Prospero and Miranda are played, quite differently from production to production, and there's a lot you can get out of that in terms of seeing what's happening in the relationship and then being able to make your own choices. So even at the very start of that monologue, when she's saying, Dad, if you did this with your magic, can you stop it, please? You can have a lot of subtext going on, basically from I don't know what's going on, Dad, did you do this? Help, 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 stop. Or Dad, I think you've done this with your magic again, which I don't like, and I really wish you wouldn't do these things. There can be a lot layered in there. So make choices. Do read the full play. Make choices about how do you think she feels about her father? How do you think she feels about the fact that she doesn't seem to have any power? He does manipulate her. He does there's some weird things where, he puts her to sleep just... There's a really weird power dynamic, and it's kind of rubbish. Obviously he kind of wants to protect her, but also I think in this day and age it reads a little bit like that's not great. So make a choice about how much is she aware of that, how much does she resent that, how does she feel about her father? Does she just completely respect him and has got no qualms about what he does, or does she sometimes feel a bit uneasy about the magic stuff? And to make those choices, you got to dig into the text and see some of the stuff that she says about her father, because there are lines where she's like, oh no, he's a really great guy, and he's usually so calm and reasonable, stuff like that. So then you got to decide, okay, well, when she says that, does she mean it, or is she just kind of saying that to make herself feel better? And you're thinking like a director. If you were in production, a director would work with you to make those choices based on a full play. But if you're doing it for an audition or an exam, you are the director as well as the actor, and you have to make those choices based on what you see in the text and the things that you decide for yourself that you think make sense. The other thing that I'd recommend you do during your rehearsal is move your body. It's really going to help you connect to the fact that this is quite a big, high emotion, high energy monologue, and she's really not bouncing off anything else. She's starting the scene, she's coming in hot. So I would actually recommend, as part of your rehearsal, run into the space, like whoever you're talking to, and if you can, grab a buddy that you can practice with, that can be Prospero for you, where you have to try and convince this person, because that's going to be more powerful for you. Run into the scene and get that energy up like you've run from watching the ship sinking. And if you've made the choice that you're outside and you're looking at things, does she sometimes walk over to see if she can see it again, or does she walk away from her dad and move back again? Play with a bit of movement. Even if you don't keep that in your actual performance at the end, it's going to help keep that energy up and that high emotion up without you having to kind of like try and force it. So using that in rehearsal to get it open and then pulling it back later if you want is more effective than trying to just, stand in one spot and hope that the emotion comes. I hope that helped you get started with Miranda's monologue. I'm going to link that breathing video on screen here, so I recommend going onto that one because it's a little bit tricky for this particular monologue. So jump onto that and make sure you subscribe because I've got heaps of stuff to help you. Other than that, good luck with your auditions and exams, and let me know if there are other monologues you'd like me to cover. Bye!